The creative department is a company mainly concerned with press, advertising, TV, radio, moving from concept to finished art. Since its inception, it's won many major awards down through the years, not just for its advertising, but also for its record sleeve designs, its t-shirts, even hats like this. The man responsible is Steve Averill.
Originally, when we started off, I would have been doing probably 80% advertising and 20% music stuff as a sort of sideline. Since then, with the growth of the music industry and following U2's success, other bands getting signed, I would say 80% now is music related.
Say you had to do something for a bank that was a specifically new thing they had, which was a new deal for over 65s, and then the next day you had to do a new band or something like that. Do you find like it's just completely different sort of requirements?
The requirements will be different, but the end results and the whole process of trying to do the best you can to sell that particular product will be the same.
Well, let's take the bands then. I mean, like, if you have a meeting, first of all, with a band, like, what kind of details have to be thrashed out?
Well, it's a strange process because sometimes you don't get to hear the music. Some people you're given the title and they don't have a track to listen to. You work on that. You work on a kind of gut feeling from what you feel about the band and their music and what they tell you they want to achieve and what sort of area they go to.
So, in other words, if the U2 album, The Joshua Tree, was released in March '87, and they went to Los Angeles to take the shots of the cover with Anton Corbijn 2 weeks before Christmas, you would have had that worked out well before that?
Well, we would have had worked out a sort of mood. The actual locations and so on would be, as did happen, would almost be whatever we came across and found, whatever felt right to do at the time. Although we would have had planned a route in which would take us through to certain overall locations. We would know in general that we were shooting the desert and that sort of location, and we would go to that place, but we would drive around and actually look and find a place that suited. Anton, obviously being the photographer, would have a large say in what actual location was chosen, because he had gone out 10 days before the rest of us to actually look at locations.
Well then, is it very difficult for you to really get the ball rolling until you see Anton's photos?
It's very difficult to design a sleeve like that without seeing the photographs, because the whole mood of the shot dictates the sleeve design. In a case like this sleeve, you're virtually under-designing sleeve because the power of the shot is so strong that you don't want to take away from it. You could do typography or whatever that would detract from the photograph. In a case like this, you're better off leaving the photograph, putting it in simplest surroundings. In some ways, an image, like a single image of a single person or thing, is a very strong image. When you have to deal with 3, 4, 5 people on a sleeve, you're diluting the power of the image slightly by having that many people on it. A single sleeve, most sleeves that have one person on them tend to be more dynamic than a group on them. For instance, say Mike Scott and the Waterboys. I mean, all their album sleeves feature Mike Scott, David Bowie, Brian Ferry. They're always one person imagery, but that person reflects the music, so therefore it works in that degree.
Well then, when you sit in an office and the very first time you start thrashing the thing out, are you very aware of what the buyer might want as opposed to what you and the band might want? Or do you sort of say, especially if it's a new band, look, this is what they're going to get?
No, I think that you've got to be aware. There's a sort of a 4-point thing that you've got to be aware of. There's you've got to do something that you like yourself and that pleases you and works for what it is. Then there's the band. Then there's the record company. And finally there's the person who's actually going to buy that record. And I think you have to see down the line and produce something that that person who is in that particular type of band will feel is right for that band. And I would hope that what I would do would be right for that band, and the person who actually buys it would feel that the sleeve and somehow elaborates on the music.
Obviously you're going to get more money the bigger the band, in which case, for instance, if a band like Light a Big Fire you mentioned, now that's the band who had an Irish single that you designed the cover of, then they get a bigger record company, they've got a bigger single to go.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a case in point, we've got sleeves like a one-colour job which done for the Irish market, because the sales of Irish singles are such that you're not going to make a lot of money on them, and therefore they're really a promotional device. So you've got to work within a restricted budget to produce artwork for that. Now, when they sign to Siren and there's a big money behind them, you can afford to do full-colour sleeves and gatefold packages or whatever the marketing device would be. I mean, the music hasn't changed a great deal, but the way the band can present themselves to the public will have changed. So, I mean, there are proven cases where sleeves definitely help to sell the records.
Yeah. And
plus the fact that you get a lot of people who buy on point of purchase. They just see something and the sleeve or whatever interests them, so they pick it up and they listen to it, or they want to know what it's about.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it is an important aspect. I wouldn't like to overemphasize it, because each designer has got his own particular style and way of doing things. I mean, in my work, I tend, because I work closely with the band, I tend to not have an individual style, because if you're in a small country like Ireland and every band is aware of every other band, and the first thing a lot of bands will say to you, I don't want to look like you too. So in a small country like this, you've got to keep each band in a separate compartment. If you did a sleeve for another band that had the same imagery or the same sort of imagery that you had in the U2 album, that would be a mistake. So you really have to keep each thing in a separate compartment and work at that.